That's messed up. All right, good morning. Today we're just going to be practicing some more of this. I put up two problems you haven't seen yet. And I'll give you a minute to work on those. Also, if you had any questions about Friday's work, now would be a good time to ask. Um, know we took a while on Friday doing these. We just kind of went through examples, and I plan on doing kind of a similar thing today. Maybe a little more complicated problems, but we're going to get this down before we go to completing the square, which is a little confusing, but is also a good method to do this. So these here are our problems today. If you haven't started already, your first step is to get them in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So you need to get it equal to 0. So whatever it is equal to, get it on the other side. So that will be your first step. Looking at number 1 here, your first step is to get this negative 60 on this side here, so it equals 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 60 to both sides. And again, this is not a term I can combine with these because they are not like terms. So this is going to become 2q squared plus 22q plus 60 equals 0. So now it's in the form that I like. So I got it equal to 0. Now I'm going to factor it. We can write our steps down. Get equal to 0. And now we're just going to factor it. Keep in mind we do have an a value, so we're going to slide and divide. This is going to become q squared plus 22q, and then the 2 is going to be multiplied by the 60, and then we're just going to remember the 2 off to the side, and 2 times 60 is 120. And that still equals 0. And then we're going to factor this part. So we need 2 factors of 120. That are going to add up to 22, and that's going to be 12 and 10. That's not hard to figure out. 12 and 10, 12 plus 10 equals 22, 12 times 10 equals 120. So our factored is going to be q plus 12 and q plus 10. Now remember, that is this factored, so we want this factored, so we got to bring that 2 back. So we're going to divide each of these factors by 2. And we're going to simplify. This becomes q plus 6, because 12 divided by 2 is 6. And this becomes q plus 5, because 10 divided by 2 is 5. And that still equals 0. Then we're going to use our 0 product rule to solve. So this step is solve for q using 0. I should write out 0 so it doesn't look like an O. 0 product property. And that's going to say, hey, we're going to take each of these little factors, we're going to separate them out and say they're both equal to 0. And q plus 5 equals 0. And then you're going to solve for q. So subtract 6, and q is going to equal negative 6. And over here, we're going to subtract 5, and q is going to equal negative 5. So these are our 2 answers right here. Both of those are solutions to our original one. Excuse me. And you can check these by actually plugging them into q in solving. If you plug in a negative 5, you should get negative 60. If you plug in a negative 6, you should also get negative 60. So these will have 2 different outcomes, or the same outcome but 2 different inputs. So hopefully, if you have any questions on that, please throw them in. You guys seem to be pretty quiet today. So I hope everything's working. Don't seem to be getting any emails. So there's that one. Let's look at this one over here. This one over here I wrote backwards, so you might want to, well, it's not really written back, there's no forward or right way to write it, but you might want to rewrite this in standard form once you get it equal to 0, just to make your life a little easier. So what we're going to do is we're going to subtract 4 from each side, and that's going to be 0 equals negative 5n plus 6n squared minus 4. And this is not in standard form, so you probably want to just rearrange it so it is. So I'm going to do that. I'm also going to move 0 onto this side here, so I'm going to say that equals 0. And then I'm going to rearrange this so it's in standard form. So I'm going to put the highest exponent first. And again, the sign goes with it. So this is a term, this is a term, and this is a term. So don't lose your signs when you move things around. I can lose that plus sign because it's implied if it's at the beginning. Then we have negative 5n and minus 4. And all that equals 0. So all what I did was rearrange that so it looks a little more like we've been doing it. You might be a little more comfortable that way, and such. So once you get to that point, you're going to factor it. And again, we have an a value, so we're going to have to move that a value out. And just remember, we multiplied everything by a 6 at the end here. So we're going to divide, or slide and divide that out, and we get n squared minus 5n, and then 6 times negative 4 gives you negative 24. And it still equals 0. And then this is what I'm going to factor. So I have factors of negative 24 here, and they need to add up to negative 5, which is going to be negative 8 and 3. Keeping in mind, signs have to be different because this is a negative number, and because this is negative 5, the larger one here has to be the negative, so they have to add up to negative 5. And negative 8 plus 3 equals negative 5. So these are the factors we want. So we're going to have n minus 8 because of the negative, and we're going to have n plus 3 because 3 is positive. And keeping in mind, we got to put our 6 back in, so I'm going to divide each by 6. And then we're going to, again, that still equals 0. We're going to simplify our fractions and move the denominator out front. So this is going to become, and then 8/6 is divisible by 2, so half of 8 gives me 4, and half of 6 gives me the 3, and I'm going to move the 3 out front. So there's 1. And over here, again, simplify it, and you can divide each by 3 in this case. So 3 divided by 3 gives me the 1. So I have n plus 1, and then the 6 divided by 3 gives me the 2, so the 2 goes out front. And that equals 0. Then you're just going to solve using your zero product property. So we're going to get 3n minus 4 equals 0, and 2n plus 1 equals 0. Is my face in the way? Yeah, my face is in the way. And 2n plus 1 equals 0. In this case, you're going to solve for n. Add 4 to both sides. Oh, that's a 1. I guess I'll do one at a time. Add 4 to both sides and you get 3n equals 4. So n here is going to be 4/3, which is actually this answer right here reduced. It's the opposite of this answer. So keep that in mind. I told you that little thing, you're going to be undoing something you already did. So it's really just the opposite of this. See how this 8/6 reduces down to 4/3, and it's the opposite. This was negative, this is positive. Over here, we're going to subtract 1. So you get 2n equals negative 1. Divide by 2, divide by 2. So you get n equals negative 1/2. And again, that's the opposite of this. Right? This reduces down to 1/2 and it's positive. I want the opposite of it, so negative. So my answers here are n equals 4/3 and n equals negative 1/2. Any questions on how we did any of that? And any questions on your homework from Friday, which I looked at a little bit. All right, with that, I'm going to give you your answers to Friday's work, and I would like you to check them. And if you're not sure how you're getting or how we're getting an answer, please ask so we can look at it. A few of them we did do together, and then we'll look at some more practice. So I gave you page, what page is this? 538, and I asked you to do 7 through 21. So number 7, you should be getting 1 and -4. And again, the order is not going to matter. If you wrote -4 first, that's fine. 8, you should be getting -2 and 7. 9, you should be getting 0 and 8. 10, 5 and 11. 5 is -2 and 5. 12 is 3 and -4. If you left the decimals a fraction, that's fine too. However you wanted to do it. This one you probably would have wanted to. So if there are any of those that you don't understand why you missed, please ask. Now would be a good time. You guys seem pretty quiet today. Don't know if that's the chat not working or what. Once you've checked that over, the other thing I'd like you to check over is look over your tests again. I did regrade them. And I did average your scores from that. If you miss things, please either ask on why you missed them or fix them and resubmit them. Well, either way, fix them and resubmit them. But if you don't know why you missed it, ask. That way I can help you out there. Alright, you guys don't seem to be asking any questions today, so I'm going to move on to some more examples. Some that are going to get a little more complicated. So let's look at another one. This here is a second degree polynomial because our highest exponent is 2, so it is a quadratic. So you should be able to solve this. And it's no different than what we just did. First step is to get one side equal to 0, and that's your choice, whichever side you want. I would assume this side here is easier to move over that way. So that's what I'm going to do. That doesn't mean this wouldn't work if you move this over that way. Still would have been, you still would get this, you'd still get the same answer, but I'm going to move this side over. So I want that to equal 0. So what I'm going to do is order of operations in reverse, and just remember to combine like terms. Actually, I don't have to do order of operations. I can just take it all at once because it's all going to be adding and subtracting. So I'm going to subtract y squared, and I'm going to subtract 4. Or 2y squared and subtract 4. And I'm going to bring them both over, so it's going to be 6y squared minus 2y squared. And I'm just going to pair up my terms so it's easier to combine them. Plus 12y plus 13 minus 4 equals 0. That's all I did was move those over. Here, 6y squared minus 2y squared I can't combine. These are like terms, and these are like terms. Again, the sign goes with whichever one's in front. 6 minus 2 gives you 4y squared plus 12y plus, and then 13 minus 4 is going to give you positive 9 equals 0. And then from there you should be able to factor that out and solve just like we were doing before. So first thing we're going to do is factor it. Again, we have an a value, so we're going to slide and divide that out. So y squared plus 12y plus, and then the 4 times the 9 gives you a 36 equals 0. So now I need factors of 36 that add up to 12, which you should be thinking, what is that? Factors of 36 that add up to 12. I'm drawing a blank here. Six and six, yeah. Thanks, Katie. 6 and 6. So we got y plus 6 and y minus, or yeah, plus 6 as well, because they're both positive. But don't forget about the 4, so you got to divide by 4. Divide by 4. This was a perfect square too. We could have did it that way. So yeah, so let's reduce these and you get y. I'm just double checking in the book. Did I write this right? Yeah, okay. It is supposed to be one answer. It's making sense to be one answer. So reduce these and you get half of 6 is 3, half of 4 is 2. And over here is going to be the same thing, because it is a perfect square. So you could have done this with finding it with square roots as well. Here we get, again, it's going to be the opposite of this, but we're just going to do it the long way. 2y plus 3 equals 0. Subtract 3, you get 2y equals negative 3, so y equals negative 3 halves. And that's going to be your answer. This is going to come out to be the same thing because it is the same factor, so there is only one answer to this one. And remember, you can have one answer, you can have two answers, and there's also a no solution possibility. However, I don't think any of the ones on here are going to give you no solution right now. So even if it gives you something a little screwy like that, you can just move things over to solve. Not too difficult. Let's do one more for practice, and then I will let you finish Friday's work if you didn't finish Friday's assignment. I know some of you probably had other things to do, so we spent a long time hanging out on Friday's assignment. Let's do, what's a good one here? 4x squared plus 20 equals 10x plus 3x squared minus 4. So you should note this is a quadratic, so you can solve it like we were doing. We just need one side to equal 0. And it's your choice on which side you want. You can bring all of this over to here. You can bring all of this over here. There's less over here, so I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to subtract 4x squared minus 4x squared. That's going to give me 20 equals 10x minus 4x squared plus 3x squared minus 1. I don't know why I wrote it in that order. We'll clean it up anyways. And then I'm going to subtract 20 from it. 10x minus 4x squared plus 3x squared minus 4 minus 20. And again, these are like terms, and these are like terms, so I can combine them. And I might as well put it in standard form while I do that. So 0 equals, and then 4x squared plus 3x just gives you x squared. Next would be the 10. That's a positive 10, and then negative 4 minus 20 gives you negative 24. Then you go ahead and factor it. If you're more comfortable with the 0 being on this side, you can move that over as well. It doesn't matter, but you're going to go ahead and factor it. There is no a term here, so we don't have to slide and divide. We just factor it like, you know, without the a term. So factors of 24 that add up to 10. This is negative, so they have to be different, and this is positive, so the other one has to be larger. So that's going to be 2 and 24. So that it would be, oh, I'm sorry, 2 and 12. So 12 and negative 2 is going to be it. So watch your signs with that, because you could easily see 4 and 6 being 1, but in that case they both have to be positive. Here this is a negative 24, so watch that. So it's going to be 12 and 2. So we get x plus 12 and x minus 2. And again, it's going to be the opposite of these. We don't have things like that. But anyways, use your 0 product rule to figure it out. X plus 12 equals 0, and x minus 2 equals 0. So here x equals negative 12, and here x equals positive 2. So you got 2 and negative 12. I'm just going to double check to make sure I did that right. I think no problem I write down 4x 32. This one's saying it is the 4. How did I screw that up? Negative x squared. Is that why? It is negative x squared. That is why. Yep, that's why I screwed that up. Start over. Look at you, Katie. You're on top of things today. In that case, we do have to slide and divide because that is a negative 1 in front of that. So we do have an a term then. So slide out the negative 1. X squared plus 10x plus 24, which then gives us the 4 and the 6, because that is a positive now, and they have to add up to 10. So you get x plus 4 and x plus 6. And don't forget about the negative 1. So basically you're dividing each by negative 1, and that's just going to change your signs. So you're going to get x minus 4 and x minus 6 equals 0, and therefore x equals positive 4 and x equals positive 6, and that makes more sense. So just watch your signs, because apparently I'm not that good at it either. But yeah. Any questions from Friday's homework? I mean, I gave you the answers to it. Hopefully you were able to figure it out. Tomorrow we're going to be doing things, we're going to solve these by completing the square, which is a little confusing on why it works. And I'll try my best to explain that to you, but it's another way of doing it. So right now, anytime when it comes to solve quadratics, you can do them by graphing. You can do them by finding square roots. You can do them by factoring. However, these are not always going to work because some things you just can't factor. Tomorrow we're going to look at completing the square to find them, which really isn't hard, it's just confusing on why it works. And then we will look at the quadratic formula on solving them, which is probably the go-to way to do these, because it will work every time. These two will work every time. And in essence, they kind of work based off the same principle, but those two will work every time. These ones, you're going to have to notice something and be like, oh, okay, this works. Chances are you're going to end up doing this every time. It's probably the most straightforward way of doing things, but you'll get different possibilities. Again, look over your test that I gave back yet again. If you missed something, please resubmit until we get them all right. I did average your grades, and I think I updated them. So check that. Check option C for any missing work that I didn't receive last week, whether it's because you didn't do it or I just don't know how to find where you put it. You can go from there. But if you guys don't have any questions, you guys seem to be pretty quiet today, so hopefully everyone's doing all right. If you have questions further down the road, email me. I am not giving you math homework, but I do expect you to be working on some science as well. So you make sure you're getting that done. Assignment sheets posted, quizzes are posted, videos are posted for science, questions about forces, if you have them, difference between balanced force, unbalanced force, anything on Newton's laws, anything about friction or a strange thing we call gravity. Any questions on any of that right now? Alright, with that, if you have any questions further down the road, email me, and I'll get back to you. Hang in there. Hopefully you guys have a good week. But I am going to end it there. So thanks for tuning in, and talk to you later. Oh, one more thing before we go. Wednesday, I don't know if I will live stream. Just because I don't know if I'm going to have time. That's my day to go into the school and actually get things. I haven't been there since, well, since you guys left too. So Wednesday's my scheduled time to go in, where it will be safe for me to go in and I won't be at a high risk of exposure to virus. So I don't know how long it's going to be in there. I don't know how much stuff I really need out of there, but that is my day. So I'm going to try to live stream, but I might not be able to because I might not be home. So keep that in mind. But tomorrow, completing the square. Again, any questions on science, email me. Forces might be a little confusing, so if you're not understanding something, let me know. And I will talk to you then. So long.